And that's why I call her AR-15.
Christmas, I give you scrap, the very next day, you boom, boom, brrr, boom.
Steve Cortez, a former member of Trump's Hispanic Advisory Council. Lonnie Chin is back with us, CNN political commentator, used to serve as public policy director for Mitt Romney. CNN senior political analyst David Gergen, who has been an advisor to 4 presidents. And CNN political commentator Angela Rye used to be the executive director of the Congressional Black Caucus. So, awesome to have you all on. Steve Cortez, Pamela Brown perfectly teed it up. You know, the list of the pros, the list of the cons for Senator Sessions as AG, especially with the allegations of racism from decades ago. How would you defend him?
Well, I defend him thusly. You know, first of all, we're talking, if the best they can do is come up with something from 30 years ago, I think it shows this man has an incredible record of public service, Attorney General of the state of Alabama, U.S. Attorney, and 2-decade-long senator. But clearly, that's going to come up again, the allegations from the 1980s. And I guess I'd say 2 things. Number 1 is that he denied them, and I believe him. I take him at his word. I think he's shown himself to be a man of honor. Secondly, and I think this is really important, he didn't lose a full Senate vote. He lost in committee. His nomination was killed there. 2 Republicans crossed over and voted with the Democrats. One of them, former Senator Arlen Specter, later recanted and said he should not have done that, said it was a mistake. I would also point out 2 of his current Senate colleagues who are vociferously anti-Trump. Senator Flake from Arizona and Senator Graham from South Carolina, both of them have immediately come out strongly in support of Senator Sessions, and these are not folks who are willing to just automatically de facto back a Trump nominee.
All important pieces of the puzzle, if in fact he's able to sail through or not. But Angela Rye, you feel differently.
I do. I think it's not even about feelings, it's just about record. So, for example, and Pamela brought this up in her commentary, for Jeff Sessions to say that the Voting Rights Act was an intrusive piece of legislation, and that is the very thing that was just before the Supreme Court in 2014. Of course, the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act, and since then, you haven't been able to get consensus in the Congress, in the House or the Senate, on moving something forward to fix what they said was wrong with the Voting Rights Act. So here you have someone who's running to be, or in the running to be, the Attorney General nominee, and he doesn't believe in voting rights legislation. So what does that really mean? That means that the Civil Rights Division, which I would argue is one of the most important right now, thanks to Attorney General Eric Holder and Attorney General Loretta Lynch, is he going to gut those if he doesn't see the point? So while Steve mentioned that he declined to admit to some of the things he's been accused of, he did admit before the Senate hearing in 80. Go ahead.
No. I'm listening to you, and I think just also adding on to this, and David Gergen, I want your voice, because also Senator Sessions made comments in the wake of the FBI investigations that the James Comey, the letter that we reported on, and the Hillary Clinton, private email server. He is actually on the record saying Comey hasn't completed the full investigation, should be more fully investigated. Are you taking that into consideration? Should the Senate take that into consideration if, in fact, they move forward?
Absolutely. The Senate must have a comprehensive hearing, as it does with other major nominees. The Attorney General's position is one of the most important in the U.S. government, and in particular, Brooke, as you well know, it's long been seen as the custodian of civil rights in the country. So that I think the question before the group in terms of civil rights would be, okay, we know what the record was 30 years ago, and we know it's in controversy. He did go down in a Republican committee, and that's important. But what has been his record since then? And I think in fairness, people ought to scrutinize that and then make the judgment, not simply go back to the 30 years. But we've had lots of people who have been major civil rights advocates over time who came out of the South and changed their minds over time. Hugo Black as a justice, or there are others that we've seen who've had conversions in effect and have become much stronger defenders. So I think in fairness to him, we ought to have the complete record out there. At the same time, it's important to explore what is his view on Comey. Is he going to, would he lean, in fact, then to having a special prosecutor? That's a huge question that has been raised by the Trump people themselves. But the other thing, of course, is he has very strong conservative views about undocumented people here in this country. And those questions are going to be swirling around, too. So I think, in fairness to him, there ought to be complete and full hearings. And then then the Congress can make up its mind.
Well, you have now in these first 3 names that have been
selected, Sessions, Flynn, Pompeo, Lonnie, who are all core, soldiers for Mr. Trump, hardliners, anything but mainstream. And then now you have your former boss
Governor Romney, add him into the mix, meeting with Mr. Trump over the weekend, possibly even considered for a cabinet position, maybe even Secretary of State. Let's give Mr. Trump the benefit of the doubt that this is truly an olive branch and this is genuine. How would Mitt Romney, who's been so critical of him, even wrap his head around working in a Trump administration?
Well, Brooke, let me just start with kind of what Governor Romney has done since the election. I mean, obviously, you saw Governor Romney issue a congratulatory tweet, and then you saw the two of them have a phone conversation. Mitt Romney is a patriot at heart. He is someone who believes strongly about trying to unify the country now that the election is done. So his priority is going to be, as he said over and over again, to help the president-elect be successful in implementing those policy priorities that he agrees with. So I think that's where we have to start with. The other point I would make also about these appointments, Brooke, is that we have to give the president some deference in this regard, right? Because you think about the priorities of a Trump administration, they are going to be different from an Obama administration. So the kind of people he's going to be appointing are going to be different. And so we have to allow the president-elect that latitude as he makes these selections. I think so far, at least, the people he's selected are not uncredentialed. These are people that have done things in their lives that are relevant to the positions that they've been appointed to. And I think at this point we really ought to, as David said, give him the benefit of the doubt.
How would this signal to, what's the signal to Democrats?
Yeah, and I think that's really the big issue here, right? He is going to be different. But the issue is, are you going to be so different that you undermine democracy, that you continue to do just that? David mentioned we need to look at his current record. Well, in 2015, he was talking about putting people who illegally immigrated back into this country in jail for 5 years. That's a law and order presidency that Donald Trump has talked about. He's clear that he would be a law and order AG, and I think that undermines democracy in a way that forgets everything that we've learned of recent about mass incarceration and over-criminalization of things that aren't worthy of criminalizing. So I think that is a real flag for us, and I can't wait for these Senate hearings where Democrats and Republicans will join together to ask some really tough questions.
Well,
I think based upon everyone.
To that
Just
point,
quickly,
though, I mean,
go ahead, put it.
And I don't want to relitigate the election, but we just had an election that was largely about the very issue you mentioned, which is illegal immigration. And the people of the United States sided with Donald Trump and with Senator Sessions. And I say this as a Latino. And they decided, no, we don't have a popular vote here. We're a republic and we have an electoral college. And they decided.
So we do have a popular vote.
Okay, well, read the Constitution. And they decided via our electoral college, by the way, that the victims are not the illegal aliens. The victims are legal immigrants and Americans. Steve. We already decided that as a country, and they have a mandate to continue forward with those policies. Yes, we did. We won. Are you saying we didn't win? Are you saying we didn't win?
No, what I'm saying is that you did not win the popular vote, and I don't subscribe to the term
because we don't run for the popular vote.
Undocumented people.
We don't try to win the popular vote. We won the electoral vote, and that's how we choose a president by our Constitution. No, you don't have to congratulate me. Congratulate the Constitution. That's our system.
Steve, and I guess the point is sometimes there's a whole challenge, and we probably can't get into it here, but there's a whole argument that's existed for centuries about the strict constitutional nature or strict constructionist nature of the Constitution. We don't have time to go into that now, but there are people who believe that the Constitution is actually a living and breathing document, and sometimes it requires change.
Well, we don't believe that. We don't believe that, and we just won based on those principles. But who cares what I believe? The American people voted us in based on those principles of strict constructionism. And I think that that's going to be one of the reasons that Senator Sessions will be a great attorney general. He's going to uphold the Bill of Rights, which has been under attack, whether it's religious liberty, gun rights. The Bill of Rights is really in danger, and he's going to be always defending it.
We can do a Constitution segment at another time. We've got to go, but I do appreciate the healthy disagreement, and I think this is just foreshadowing to these tough questions that will arise for some of these folks in these confirmation hearings.
Christmas.